Hey, what's up everyone? Thanks for tuning in. This video is a pre-patch update to answer as many questions as I can before league start. There are a few things I just ran out of time to answer in the guide for 324. This video will mostly be about that, and some of these things I already covered in the notes section if you're looking for a quick reference. I also want to talk a little bit more about self-chill at the end of this video since a lot of people did that in 323. The TLDR of it is that it's still possible to do, but the opportunity cost is huge. First, let's talk about Sanctum. I think I've gotten this question the most. Explosive Trap, the skill itself, is at a mechanical disadvantage in Sanctum right out of campaign because of the way it delivers damage. Instead of immediately like Fire Trap of blasting or auto-targeting like Hex Blast Miner, damage is dealt over 1 second when the trap is triggered, which means there's a larger window for you to take damage since we don't freeze things. On top of that, Explosive Trap scales best with levels, and you just aren't going to have gem levels right out of campaign. In fact, I don't typically switch to Explosive Trap until white or yellow maps. Once you get into high levels like 90 plus, it's possible to run Sanctums if you aren't using a Sunblast, but I would avoid it if you were using a Sunblast. Next, let's talk about Sunblast. You 100% do not need a Sunblast. It will probably be moderately expensive opening weekend. Who knows how the economy will shake out. You can do all the same content with a rare belt with the Essence of Seal modifier on it and later add on a Redeemer prefix. Check out my 323 guide for an example of how to do this. Next, hardcore. The PoBs and leveling guidance I have in my guides are for softcore trade. You can absolutely play Explosive Trap Trickster as a hardcore build, and if you're looking for a more hardcore friendly PoB, take a look at Zizzarin's guide, which he dropped yesterday, and I'll link it down below in the description. I know several people last league did a mixture of our two PoBs and had a good experience, but I wouldn't use the PoB that I provide in hardcore without being comfortable making some adjustments like prioritizing ailment immunity earlier, sourcing some recovery through recoup and life regen, prioritizing chaos res earlier, and so on. For our SSF friends, I left some notes, but you do not need any uniques for this build to shine in SSF. I've played it in SSF before. You just want to do a couple things differently. Number one, I would prioritize crit chance for spells on the gear over most affixes in late maps. You're going to want to run a diamond flask with at least one flask that has a crit chance suffix. I would roll medium crit clusters as soon as you can from Deli. There is also crit chance you can source on your helmet implicit and so on. You could also roll an increased base crit chance chest once you have some influence bases. And I would start working on the Twins contract as soon as you can, as Scorch and Brittle are enormous damage upgrades even at the cost of your amulet slot. Any high evasion based body armor unique should be corrupted. You want +2 AoE or +2 Trapper Mind Gems, and the additional 2 levels are substantial to your damage. I'd be picking up every half Legion evasion chest I see and corrupting it. There's a list of unique chests I think are reasonable options for various reasons in the notes section. Number 3, you do not need a Sunblast. The build functions well without one. I talked about that just a second ago. This applies even more so in SSF. Next, I want to touch on the Atlas tree and what I plan on running content-wise at League Start. Now, my League Start for 324 is going to be completely scuffed. I am traveling a lot the first 3 weeks, and I won't get to play very much opening weekend, but I will basically be doing what Tuna outlines in his Atlas strategy video, which I think is a fantastic breakdown of map progression, and I personally will be speccing into Expedition, as that is how I typically will source early currency to start bossing. I've linked his excellent guide to the new Atlas in the description. Content-wise, this build is good at Harvest, Essences, Beast Farming, Expedition, basically anything that is gated behind good single target. Things I would avoid are clear speed related like Legion. Another important topic is bossing, since this is primarily a bossing build. Another question I get asked a lot is, when do I start bossing? Now, the answer to this will be different from person to person, as early bossing is one of the few skill checks in PoE. If you aren't used to mechanics, then you are going to die because no one has gear to tank things or one-shot things on day 2 without a duo or a bot. For me, this is usually 2 or 3 divines invested in most leagues. I'll start running Guardian maps as soon as I have enough character power to kill the Guardians with no modifiers on the map. The loot I care about, fragments specifically, are not affected by quant, and so they can be run white, and I'll roll the invitations blue with no defensive modifiers on them. What I'm showing you in this clip is me with the level 92 tree, and I took 2 extra strength nodes that wouldn't be necessary if I actually had strength on my gear. This is a 6 length with level 20 gems, a 1 mod scepter, a 1 mod amulet, life and res on my gear, no Sunblast, and 1 weapon with 3 mods. I would have just used 2 mod scepters, but in the interest of time, it was just easier to hit a T2 essence on a fractured base. The only cluster jewel I'm using is a Trap and Mine medium, the same one in the PoB. I also have no source of Brittle. I thought that was really important to showcase what it looks like without Brittle. And I rolled this Guardian pretty hard intentionally. So it's got increased damage, it has turbo on top of that, and the boss is possessed. All are strong map modifiers. As I progress, I'll start making the invitations harder as loot does scale there, and eventually I'll roll all invitations 65% and val them, as the build can run any invitation map mods. I usually roll from Guardians into some other boss like farming Shaper bases or normal Shaper, maybe doing Maven carry service or Uber Elder, but I want to caution you, carry service is not something I would recommend for the vast majority of people unless you've practiced that thing specifically. Nothing feels worse than bricking a writ because you don't know the memory game mechanic very well. Lastly, I said in 3.23 in one of my videos that you could go self-chill without a Mage Blood and the reduced cost flask suffix, and that is still true. However, the opportunity cost is very high, which is why I don't recommend it. Some people tried it in 3.23 and might want to do it anyway, so I'm going to give you a combination of things that will reduce your mana cost to a middling single digit. To be super clear, I do not recommend doing this, and if you are doing it, it is still much easier with the Mage Blood to help with Chaos and Elemental resists. The combination of items is an impossible escape for glancing blows, Dreamer anointed on your amulet. You probably want Cold-Hearted Calculation as it will improve your mana regen rate enough to sustain. The Mana Mastery for 10% reduced cost of skills. A 2120 Inspiration will help more than a 2020. And either a normal amulet with the Elrion Craft and a Clarity Watcher's Eye, or if you have a bit more budget, a focused amulet with the Elrion and Fertile Catalyst. You can do this to get self-shield going on Trickster again, but again, I do not recommend doing it. It's going to cost a lot of currency, and requiring that much from your passive tree for just mana is probably not worth it. My tentative plan is still to respec into Saboteur once I have a Mage Blood, since it's been a while since I've done Explosive Trap Sabo, and push AoE and life regen using EB to offset mana costs. I don't yet have a fully fleshed out PoB for that for you, but I just haven't had enough time to finish it yet, but there you go. I'll see you guys on the beach after I get a chance to test the new version of Shrapnel in Standard.